Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Good Deeds Note Investing Podcast. I am Jamie Bateman. I am joined by my co-host, Christopher Seveney, and we have a special guest this week. We are joined by Miss Kimberly Banks Fawcett of Note Investing Academy and several other entities. Kimberly, how are you today?
I'm doing good. How are you guys today?
Good. Thanks for joining us. And we have
no problem. Thanks for having me.
We could take this conversation in many different ways. You have a ton of experience in real estate and notes and lots of stuff we can talk about, but I'll kick it over to Chris to see what's on his mind.
I just want to say it's been 41 seconds. I haven't said anything, so that's a record. I'm just back from vacation as well. It's been a while, actually, since I've been on a podcast. It's been a few weeks. So
that's why I have to do some on my own without Chris so I can get a word in,
Yeah, that is true. No, I've got lots of built up... I don't know what the word would be to use.
Energy?
Today, energy, yes. Energy. So a lot of energy today. So, but, typical, this summer has been going pretty well. I think we mentioned this a little bit in the Facebook group, though, as we talk a little bit about notes. It's been a little slower this summer compared to other summers. I don't know if it's more people on vacation, just people still waiting on assets because of COVID. Kimberly, have you kind of seen that as well?
I have, and I've seen a number of really interesting deals to come through. I feel like people maybe are trying to sell some of their bad stuff. I recently had two different notes where they had gone all the way through a foreclosure and then it was overturned.
Interesting.
So those are always interesting. And on either one of them, I offered them $1,000 and they said no. So they apparently think they can find someone that wants a uncollectible note, but
So, I
find those fun. It might be a problem in my personality, but there's always some way to get around it, and and if you can't get around it, eventually they get tired of hearing from me and they buy me off for $1,500, and then it wasn't a waste of my time. So
there you go.
Yeah, I was telling Jamie, one, I had a foreclosure overturned because of the number of publications was incorrect. It was off by one, so we have to go republish one last time so the deceased borrower can be notified the fifth time. But
was that in Maryland, Chris?
Virginia.
Oh, it was Virginia. Okay.
Yeah, it was in Virginia.
Gotcha.
But so the deceased borrower, is definitely going to complain that it was only 4, not 5. I have had a deceased borrower show up to court, though. I will.
Really?
Yes. It was actually the son with the same name claiming it was him. So interesting. I kind of, we can like to hear some of your crazy stories as well, because I'm sure, like you said, you've been around a while now. What's going 8-10 years in this business?
Mm-hmm. So. Specifically in notes, yes, but I've been doing real estate. I invested in my family were real estate investors, but I invested in my own property 3 months out of college.
Oh, okay.
And I'm not going to tell you what you
So kind of talking about that, why don't you tell people who don't know, who basically haven't really been in note space long enough, because everyone that has knows who you are, but why don't you give people a little bit about who you are, your background, and so forth?
Sure. Like I said, I grew up in a real estate family. My father he was a contractor, and then he was a partner in a development business in town. I went off to college and got my first finance degree. And then when I came back, my father had passed away, and it was time to close down his real estate business. And as you can imagine, it worked really well when it was the two dads. But once it was all of the kids trying to run the investments, that didn't work for very long. So I spent a few years trying to sell those off. Those were all commercial assets, 2 strip malls and a mixed-use building. So that's where I got a lot of my commercial experience. Then I started investing for myself, and I started with rentals, like I think most people do. I eventually got to a 28-unit apartment building. Well, 2 apartment buildings, 28 units total. And that's when I really decided that being a landlord was not optimal, shall we say.
There you go.
Tenants are just, I don't know. Tenants are annoying. Property managers are annoying.
It's a lot of
Trying
work.
to get repairs done are annoying. And then one day I was at a real estate event and someone started talking about note investing and hit me with you can get the same monthly income, but you don't have to deal with tenants anymore. And I was hooked. So since 2012, I've been predominantly doing note investing, but we did sell the strip mall. No, we did sell the apartment building, and now we have a strip mall because you can't 1031 into paper.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
I have a property manager for that. But my big tenant is Starbucks, so they're really not that hard to deal with.
Oh,
Nice.
Their leases, though, I've dealt with Starbucks corporate. They can be pretty tedious in the things they want. So
Yes. I'm lucky though, since they're the biggest tenant and they've been there for 10 years now. They've already gotten all the things that they want, and I just work around them for the other 4 spaces because I really would like to keep them. So I bet if you have them in a, I don't know, 50, 60 spot mall, they're much more difficult to deal with. But when there's 5, sure, you can have whatever you want.
So back to notes real quick. Sorry, Jimmy. Primarily firsts, seconds, non-performing, performing, mix of everything. What's your...
Honestly, a mix of everything. I started in non-performing firsts. And then I got interested in seconds, mostly because it just seemed too cowboy-like to me. I mean, when you only have $2,000 in an investment, you can just not really care when you try this or try that or try the other thing. Plus, people told me that you couldn't possibly be a first and a seconds notes investor. You have to specialize. And when people tell me I can't do something, I usually go and try and do it. Hence those deals that no one can actually foreclose on that we mentioned earlier. And then I have branched a little bit into performing notes. I prefer to get a note performing than buy one already performing. I don't know. Maybe I'm a pessimist. I just figure they're going to stop paying on me and I will have overpaid. So nowadays, I think I like seconds more than firsts. Like I said, they're firsts I feel are very pretty much cookie cutter. I mean, I realize borrowers will take you in wherever they want to. But you do this and you do that and then you do the other thing because you've got 50, 60, 100 grand in that deal. When you've got 2,500, 5,000, something like that, well, then you can try whatever you want. And I enjoy that. So
Interesting. Yeah. So I know right now a lot of us are struggling with a bit of deal flow challenges. And so as far as seconds go, or have you found any challenges there recently?
It's interesting. I have had less deal flow with seconds for probably forever. I mean, it's been quite a while. But lately, every once in a while, just, a new pool of 100 will show up here, or a new pool of 50 will show up there. I just recently bid on a whole pool, and I'm hoping that the fact that I bid on the entire thing, I might get it. Because it's really hard to cherry pick seconds. You've got 100 deals. I'll take 12 of them for 50 grand.
Right.
No one gets excited by that. So we'll see.
Now,
That's why I think I'm really lucky to do both. So,
have you seen people, I'm curious too, shift from one to the other? I know at one point a lot of people were doing seconds and I think they thought it was drying up, so it kind of moved to first. And I actually, personally, I think I've seen a lot more people just exit the note space, or people I talk to have been exiting the note space because I think they realize it's not as sexy as a lot of the gurus back in the day would tell you it was. But, just curious over, do you still, I mean, I've always kind of thought I've seen more people in firsts and seconds, but I'm just curious for your opinion on that.
I think so. I think more people are in firsts, and I think people do abandon seconds faster than people abandon firsts. The big trend that I've seen, I'd say in the last 5 years or so, was not necessarily people in firsts and seconds shifting, but people in firsts going into contract for deed, not realizing what they got into, losing their whatever, and then either going into first or just giving up completely. I think that was the big oh, look, all this new inventory, and it'll be great. And it's the same thing, but it's cheaper. And oh, isn't that wonderful? Well, there's a reason why it's cheaper.
So what would you say, sorry, Chris, what would you say besides the entry point, lower cost on seconds, what would you say are some other differences between the two? I know we had Fuquan Bilal on, and we were talking about some due diligence differences. Obviously you might be a little more focused on the borrower in seconds than the property potentially, but how would you compare not just due diligence, but just being a note investor in seconds with firsts?
Well, just to hit on due diligence a little bit, I think when people emphasize the fact that second you look at the borrower and first you look at the house, I almost feel like they're simplifying or oversimplifying just to get someone to listen to them. I don't mean to say that Fuquan does that, but that's a sound bite someone might pick up on. I feel like you do the same due diligence for a note, regardless of what position you're in, or going to be in. Yeah, I mean, if I look at a second, I want to know why the borrower's not paying. I want to know that they're paying their first. I want to see if they had, I don't know, if it's been medical debt that caused a problem, or if they've bought their fourth jet ski and that's the problem. But I do that a bit with firsts too, because you look at it, okay, well, fine. If I have to foreclose and I don't get the full UPB, could I do a deficiency judgment on this guy? I mean, that's still looking at the borrower. I feel like all the skills are exactly the same. You need to know all of the things. It's just different emphases, depending on your loan position. So, but like I said, I have more fun doing a second because it's like you've let go of the fear of having so much money in that one deal. It's so much easier to get a short payoff in a second, or I have one right now that is just went into Chapter 7. And the borrower wants to surrender the house to the first. Hello, I'm the one that's delinquent. Whatever. And I mean, at first you're like, oh God, this will be the one where I finally get stripped. What am I going to do? Well, there's enough equity in the house, so I won't, if it goes through, it won't be a home run, but I'll be fine.
Right.
Maybe I just don't like the stress that you can get into on some firsts, with that much money in there.
Right.
So,
you're talking Chris into buying some seconds really soon. Right
I'm
now.
already spinning. The head's already spinning.
That's what's happening right now.
No, so the question I was going to ask is, so like you mentioned, 4 or 5 years ago, like CFDs were the big thing that people were going into and just getting completely crushed. And now I remember somebody took down, never bought a note, took down a pool of 30 of them. And basically afterwards was just like, ugh. And I know another person who took down a large pool, and a pool they took down was basically the stuff I had thrown back, because when I read the servicing notes, it was like there was a house, for example, in Maine that didn't have a back roof, and there was 3 feet of snow in the house. And all of this was in the servicing notes, and the person had it, I think, actually on paper stack. And I replied to them for the price. I said, did you actually check the servicing notes on this one? Because basically there's no roof on the house, and it's in Maine. And he's like, how do you know that? I'm like, servicing notes. He's like, oh, I never got those. And I'm like, oh. So but I digress. My question though was, that was 4 or 5 years ago. What do you think is the next kind of gotcha where newer investors are coming in and looking at things that is going to be potentially problematic down the road? I saw something that I'll comment on afterwards, but I was just curious what your thought is.
That's a great question. I don't know if it'll be the biggest thing, but I really think we're going to get hit by those forbearance plans that no one has reported. If you don't look delinquent on your credit report, a note, as you know, a note seller doesn't have to tell you that. And apparently you don't have to be smart enough to ask. So I think people are going to get notes that either appear to be performing, appear to be reperforming, when you say forbearance plan, or are just, I don't know, 2 years more delinquent than they thought they were when they got them. And I think that's going to hit some people that really don't pay attention or don't do great due diligence. I think it's really going to hit them.
Yeah, I think so. And it actually just popped in my mind too, because you got people with like deferred interest on these loans. Like you said, it's going to show current, but the person may not have paid in the last 2 years. And it's just like, okay, it's current because they deferred the interest because they wrapped in some plan. The other thing I've been seeing a lot is especially on some stuff like line of credit loans and stuff like that, some really ugly and bad paper. Where a lot of title issues and statute of limitation issues and so forth that, people will send me this list and I'll be like, this isn't even collectible and so forth. I mean, it's literally not foreclosed, but the note is actually not collectible. So I'm like, you can't even go after the person for a deficiency and so forth. And they're like, oh, where'd you learn that? And I'm like, I've asked an attorney in the past, and did you ask an attorney or did you run, and so forth? They're like, no. So
I can't stand the answers you get from sellers sometimes when you notice a problem. They don't have to have noticed it. They don't have to really admit that. But the fact that they downplay it, even though it's come up in conversation, is ridiculous. I was bidding on a note, one of my notes where it's it had been foreclosed and now it was reversed and now it's a note again. They cannot account for almost $50,000 in legal fees. They don't have the bills. Yeah. They don't know what it is. But they still want me to pay over a UPB because it's basically going to be an REO.
Yeah.
Well, sure, I'll pay $12,000 over UPB if you're going to tell me I'm going to get this $50,000 windfall. And this is the answer I got. No, we really can't find it. And we couldn't possibly lower the price because we had already taken your bid, which was the lowest bid we got. We don't have a relationship. It's not like you're doing me a favor. So you're telling me, you sit there and go, ooh, who will pay me the least? Let's go with them. It's so insulting.
Yeah.
It's so
ridiculous.
I've had that in the past too. It's like, okay, you want me to pay more than UPB? Are you guaranteeing the legal fees and accrued interest? And they're like, no. And I'm like, then why would I? Because in certain states, it might not be collectible or you may have added it. But like you said, if you don't have an inventory of every single invoice and somebody fights it, it can get stripped pretty easy. And, and I know sellers that will basically be like, oh, I want more than UPB. And, there's one company that's out there basically puts it in a thing, seller wants more than UPB on this. And first thing I'll ask is, okay, so I assume they're guaranteeing in that if, and I ask a question, if it gets stripped, they give me $1 for $1 back, right? And they're like, no, they won't give you anything back. And I'm like, then why would I bid off of that? So.
So, but the question, do you follow up afterwards to see if they were able to sell it to somebody?
Typically I just see that tape come back about a month or 2 months later. So
yeah, that's true. That is true. But I like to look, I want to know who's out there paying these prices and buying these deals that just don't make sense. Just to, keep an eye on them and maybe avoid them if I can.
That's fair.
Yeah, it's a good point because I use data tree and I can go in and see, or just go online to the county and be like, oh, here's that property. Oh, who got the assignment? But a lot of times, sometimes though, it's newer investors as well, and they don't even realize that they're supposed to record the assignment. I don't know how many times I've sold assets, especially contract for deeds, and I get tax bills and stuff, and I'll email a person like, did you ever record the deed? They're like, no, was I supposed to? And I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah.
So Kimberly, had a question. So I know you've got a ton of experience in the space, and I
feel like you keep calling me old, by the way.
Experience. You started right out of college, so
exactly.
But I was just curious, kind of what a day in the life of Kimberly looks like, or a week in your life, because you've got your hands in several different things as far as note investing, real estate. You've got the the DME, which we'll talk about later.
Mm-hmm.
You've got your Note Investing Academy. So I guess really what I'm getting at is how much of your time and energy is devoted to each kind of, I know you do some training as well. So yeah, how does it, what's your week look like?
Well, it really does kind of depend on what time of the year it is. I mean, obviously when we're closer to the DME, there's a lot of that
It's
going
all
on.
DME, yeah.
Yeah. And I guess it also depends, if it's right after the DME, the way we've scheduled it this year, that'll be third quarter or fourth quarter when everybody's getting rid of things. So, but when we set up Note Investing Academy, we wanted to make sure that we didn't end up being one of those investors that now realizes education is really profitable, so now I don't have to bother to buy any more deals. That
People like that out there?
Yes, there are. There are a couple of them.
Okay.
That might bother me more than the seller that tells me something ridiculous just to get me to go away.
That's for me.
Yeah.
Actually, can I just ask one question? Can you name somebody besides Note Investing Academy that has training beside yourself that actually still buys notes?
Don't you?
Technically, I don't have training. So I have a membership group coming up, but, and so forth.
Let's see. Oh, that's a good one.
I mean, we can table that for later, but I mean, most people who go there because they don't buy any more notes. So
yeah. I mean, we do some sales and marketing and a lot of like a meetup or a Facebook Live or whatever, and that does take time away from tracking down deals and doing all of that. But it's all recorded on video, and things. There's no reason to redo all the videos every year. It's not like it's a super time-intensive program to maintain, but we do marketing. I mean, I have an assistant and I have a VA. They can do a lot of that, so I can just focus on my note deals. So I'd say if I had to come up with hours, and if I was talking about an average week, not with an event coming up, I'd say I'm 85% deals, 20% working on Note Investing Academy. It just doesn't need more than that. So,
yeah.
And then, as you both know, you get to a certain point in this space where everybody and their brother has questions. So
right.
Whether you're running education or you're just staying alive in a Facebook group, someone's going to ask you something. So that takes it time.
And the way I see it, there's a big difference between what you're offering, with the very reasonably priced academy and education versus, a $40,000 to $100,000 program. Oh, yeah. There's nothing wrong with education and helping people, and you have more experience. I didn't say you're old. I said you have more experience than a brand new person, so why not help somebody out? And your time is valuable though. So why not charge for that? So there's nothing wrong with that, but so that makes sense.
Since we're talking about other programs, is there really one that's going to 100,000? I mean, I know one that used to be 70.
Okay. I don't know if it's still 70 or not. The last time I saw it a few months ago, it was 70 or 75.
Yeah.
Okay.
I have not seen one for 100. I just threw that out there.
Okay. It probably is, because there was a 70, and then the second's friend came out with his as 75. So wouldn't the one who was 70 want to bump theirs up?
Yeah, if it's working, I guess.
Hey,
But
well, it is just so you know, it is a marketing tool to give like different options. And you never expect to sell the expensive one. The expensive one's supposed to drive you into the middle to sell that one. Yeah. So the $100,000 program is selling the $50,000.
They call that anchoring, I think. Yeah, something like that.
Yes, I believe that is the term. So.
I call it insanity, but
or insanity.
I agree.
Well, like Chris, I mean, Jeff, your buddy Jeff, who we've had on the podcast, he just posted today. He bought 6 kind of low dollar NPLs, I think, and but you've been helping him out, kind of mentoring him, whether formally or informally. And at the end of the day, you learn by doing. So you need someone looking over your shoulder, someone that's more experienced to help you out. But I don't know. That's how I learn, is by doing and asking questions, and not from taking some weekend course and then being an expert on Sunday evening magically.
Well, he's enjoying actually the stories, because he went to a house that cost $2,500 just to get the crap out of the front door to actually get in the house. And he was bragging. I think he was kind of like talking to his wife. There was like 50 buckets of like, human waste like in the property and stuff.
Yeah.
And he was like,
I saw that post.
He's like, this is awesome. And I'm like, yes. It is, in the sense of, these are stories that just, because again, on the news and stuff, people are like, always like, oh, these beautiful houses that people are losing. It's like, I've never actually taken back a house that would be livable in the next day, or probably even the next month of cleaning it out. So,
yeah. But it sounds like this is the perfect business for him if buckets of human waste are entertaining, because the things that you can find are outstanding.
Well, yeah, because he works like in advanced research for the government and stuff. So everything that he works on is kind of more theoretical and so forth. So actually something that he can feel and touch is better. Speaking of which, tell us one of your craziest stories.
Craziest stories.
Or best notes or worst notes, whatever,
But you had a really good deed story that you.
Yeah, I like that one. But I mean, you have to remember, there's crazy stories, there's icky stories, there's good stories. I mean, there's so many stories in no investing. But I think the craziest one I have is continuing to go on. I bought this note, I think like 2014, and put him on a forbearance plan, and he paid every single payment for an entire year. It was beautiful. I had my first reperformer. I was so excited. And then he just went dark. It took me another 2 months to get a hold of him again. And he pays, then he stops paying, then he pays, then he stopped paying. And, he's not far enough behind to really call him a non-performer. But I don't think he's far enough ahead for me to really sell it as and make money. I don't know. But he recently had a tree fall on his house, and it took out part of the roof. And he didn't have insurance because he assumed I had insurance for him. Okay. So he's been calling my assistant. He calls her all the time, and he just talks in circles. Clearly, that poor man is not all there anymore. I mean, and he's got all kinds of conspiracy theories. I'm sure he wears a tinfoil hat at some times. And he gets lost in the conversation. But the best part was when the tree fell on his house, he couldn't understand that it wasn't his insurance policy, that I was the one that was insured. So he called, I don't even know how he did this. He called the local insurance agent. They wouldn't talk to him. He's not the insured. Called the regional department, went all the way to corporate headquarters to get someone to talk to him. Every day people would be like, you have this borrower that's called it. Yeah, I know. I can't make it stop. But anyway, we went through the whole process. We filed a claim for the roof damage, this and that. And it was, one of those ones where you get bitten in the whatever on your replacement cost or actual replacement value or whatever term they use. And we got $100 for this roof. Yeah. And because I'm me, I was like, okay, well, you have to actually make a repair and send me a receipt. And then I'll send you the $100.
Yeah, go spend $6,000 to repair it, and I'll send you $100.
Exactly. I'll be happy to do that. We just, keep everything on the up and up. But my good deeds deal that you mentioned, Jamie, I bought my first pool of seconds, and some of them I really, really wanted in the pool, and others you're like, well, look, it looks fine, whatever, I don't care. And this was one that I had just sort of, whatever, we'll figure out what we can do with it. It was in Tennessee, and like 2 days after the borrower received my hello letter, he was on the phone calling me. Apparently, a couple of years before that, there had been a Category 5 hurricane that took out his entire neighborhood. So there no longer was a house. Google didn't seem to know that, neither did Zillow. And so he's telling me his whole situation. Because of the stress of going through this whole thing and losing everything, and during the tornado, he got really hurt. His marriage didn't survive the issue, which is very sad. Understandable, but sad. So this was the last thing he had to deal with before his marriage would just be done and he could go on with his life. He had paid off every other debt, and his first mortgage was paid off by insurance. So he was so eager to talk to me because the entire time he was trying to find information on how he paid it off, no one had recorded their assignments, like you mentioned, Chris. And it was one of those ones, 4 hedge funds have owned it in the last 20 minutes, and nobody ever records their assignments. So who knows who owns your loan? And I would say it was definitely the first time I had a long talk with a borrower, and it was probably the last time I'm going to. Because what happened during the storm was it picked up his house, and when it did that, it also picked up the concrete slab that was their front porch, and they were all in the basement, which is completely exposed now, and the whole slab came down and landed on him. Oh. So he had to learn how to walk, talk, swallow, the whole thing. Hence, that's probably why it was stressful in his marriage. But so he's telling me that, and then he said, but thank God it didn't hurt the kids. They were right next to me. And when he said that, his voice caught. And of course, I was like, okay, I can't cry. I'm talking to a borrower. And I really felt for the guy. But I realized that someone's story about their children could get to me. And I don't think you should allow that to happen. It doesn't mean you have to be unfeeling, of course. But I feel like I need the buffer. I'll have my servicer talk to them. I'll have my assistant talk to them, and then we'll be unemotional and figure out what we're going to do. But we were actually able to really help him. I had paid $4,000 for his loan, and he owed about $45,000. So, it was a while ago when you could buy seconds really cheap. And he had been talking to a developer that I think he had bought some of the other lots in that cul-de-sac. So he wanted to buy this lot too. He sold the lot for $25,000. I took $20,000. He took $5,000, and he was able to pay off all the obviously the closing costs, and he paid off his attorney, and now he's done with his ex-wife. Nice. He was just thrilled. So that was nice. I mean, I could have taken less, honestly. I could have been like, well, give me $10,000 and work. But I don't know that you have to. You can do a good deed without harming yourself. So.
There's nothing wrong with a win all the way around like that one. That's so that's what, a 500% return.
Yeah, but I mean,
but you also cut.
Go ahead.
You cut his. He owed more than you ended up getting. So
that's true. That's very true. But that is one of the hangups on seconds. I mean, who's going to say that wasn't a home run? A 500% return? But I'm not retiring on that money. I can't pay for college with that. It just okay.
Right.
So.
That's a good point. Yeah, the percentages of your returns may be really high, but the dollar amounts are not. Yes. Relatively speaking.
Exactly. So
I'd like to kind of shift a little bit and talk a little bit about the Diversified Mortgage Expo, DME, which is coming up the end of September down in St. Petersburg, Florida. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that event? This is, I know you took it over a few years ago, or actually a former event that you transformed it into Diversified Mortgage Expo, I should say. So why don't you tell people a little bit about that, who's it for, and we'll ask some questions about it.
Sure. Well, it actually started out in 2014, and it was completely focused on non-performing debt because, we were still working through all the problems from 2008. I I mean, we know now that everything was sort of fizzling by then, but whatever. They still felt they could have an event on it. And it went pretty well for the number of years that those two gentlemen owned it. But myself and Liz Bruner Smith, we purchased it end of 2019 and decided to change it to the Diversified Mortgage Expo. Because like I said, I feel like everybody needs all the same skills and all the same information. You just apply it differently. So there's more people buying performers, there's more people buying reperformers, all of that. We wanted to make sure we encapsulated all of it. So 2020 was our first actual event. And I don't know if anybody noticed, we also had a bit of a international health problem. So it was going to be live in Nashville, and it was going to be a lot of fun. And then it was on Zoom. But it still turned out really good. You two were both wonderful, which I would have said even if I wasn't on your podcast in this moment. It went really well. I have to be honest, I was really surprised with the great reviews, great comments we got from everybody. Because nobody wants to spend 2 days on Zoom. You just don't. But the information was really, really good. And somehow we got people to be able to network on Zoom, which was just...
The breakout rooms were awesome. You'd have in between, you have a breakout rooms, and it's just, people like, I hadn't heard of seeing Wayne Snell in a while, just hear some of the crazy stories he had going on. It was just good to catch up to people because, again, a lot of us also don't have time to also fly around the country to go to a lot of these events either. So,
yeah, and you also didn't you have like 2 tracks? Was it?
We have, yeah. I mean, our main sessions are things that anybody in the business at any level should know. And then we have sort of a new investor track and I wouldn't say an expert track, but, an advanced track. And they're also different topics. It's not like it's, session 1, 2, and 3. So even though you're brand new, maybe you're really interested in this one advanced topic, or in the reverse. You could be a pretty advanced investor and, I don't know, there's a bankruptcy talk and you want to go see that because that, something's going on there and you want more information there. So it's flexible. So that's what happened in 2020. Now it's 2021 and, there's still a pandemic. The idea of getting everybody into a building and getting someone sick, even if we did everything we could keep from it, no. So we had it all planned for the end of May. Everything was great. It was going to be in person. No, it was going to be in Zoom then. And my family just sort of imploded a bit. It's really hard to try to mother your college student who's 14 hours away. It just, anyway. Luckily, spending a little time on that kept it from becoming a total disaster, so it was good. So we had to delay the DME. Liz could have done it all by herself, but she didn't want to. She wanted, to move it later. Now, like you said, we're going to meet in St. Pete at the end of September. We are very excited to be able to do it in person. Although COVID is starting to sound a little scary again.
It's like every place you pick, it's following it. It's like, hey, we're going to It's like, hey, let's just,
It's just crazy. I don't know. Someone did actually just yesterday send me a message. So do you think it's still going to happen? Like, are you going to be in person? I'm like, okay. DeSantis has gone all in on Florida staying open. So I think, with the exception of maybe Texas,
right?
There's no other place that's more guaranteed to be open for our.
That's probably true, yeah.
So, for good or bad, but yeah. So, and I'm really excited with all the people that are coming together. I just think it's going to be fun. I mean,
so it's 2
the
days.
event is I'm sorry?
Sorry, it's 2 days, September 30th and October 1st.
It's 2 days. It's right? September 30th and October 1st, all day, both days. And this time it is Thursday, Friday, because we had a little trouble last time on a Saturday having some people show up. They were like, I'm not speaking on a Saturday. I'm crazy. So We fixed that. Yeah, and I even and I encourage anybody else to do this if they're going to be in St. Pete. I have a meeting scheduled for Monday morning, so I go and I get to stay all weekend and be able to deduct that because I have to get to the meeting. So all the CPAs say that works. So I would be.
Oh yeah, as long as it's planned ahead of time, right? Yeah.
I just went and looked at investment property in the Virgin Islands last week. So I flew in on a Saturday night. We looked at property on Sunday. We looked at property on Tuesday, and we looked at property on Thursday and Friday.
Is that why you texted me every day to say, I'm looking at property today? I'm looking at property today, just so there'd be a trail for your...
No, I was looking at property.
Just kidding. Just kidding.
Put an offer on one, too. Got rejected.
If Chris gets audited, he can show them.
Yes. It's kind of like the police officer that keeps the little notebook.
Yeah.
It can't be a he said, she said thing because I wrote it in my book and therefore it must be true.
Absolutely. So the Note Investing Academy you also have with Liz as well. Is that right? Mm-hmm. So what's is those kind of the two big things you guys have worked on together, or do you do investing together, or?
We haven't invested together, but she has flipped me a couple of loans from time to time because she's more into the seller financing space. So she goes out and finds them and then resells them. So I bought a couple of those. I'm not.
Gotcha.
Seller financing isn't really my thing. I prefer the institutional ones, but she seems to like that, But I think that adds to Note Investing Academy and to the DME because we both have different strengths and focuses, so we can each bring our own flavor to it. The first panel that she put together was how to source seller finance notes. I'm like, hey, we got to talk about other things too. But the one panel that we have really had trouble filling, and maybe you guys can suggest somebody, is about accounting and bookkeeping. Now, I realize it's not the most fascinating topic, but is there no one out there that can really talk about it?
Now, are you open to a virtual speaker?
She may go.
Well, maybe.
Yeah, we
both
use Debbie Mullins out of Texas.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you used Debbie in the past.
I have. I used her way back when.
Okay.
She sort of trained my assistant, so now I have an assistant.
There you go.
She mentioned she may go.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I could talk accounting all day long, and bookkeeping.
Would you want to?
I don't
really.
So here's a crazy story. When I was a little kid, my mother used to work for a bookkeeper, and she used to give me the balance sheet, the big 11 by 17 legal papers, and have everything handwritten and in the columns and pencil, and I'd have the adding machine, adding everything up and stuff. And basically, I used to love numbers, so I'd be like, oh, can I do that? But yeah, I could talk bookkeeping all day long if you wanted somebody, because that's one thing nobody really looks at or talks about. And it's like the number one thing I tell people is, if you're going to invest with somebody, the first question I ask them is, can you show me a sample of a deal on a balance sheet or in your books? Because most people will be like, what are you talking about? And if they can't figure out how much they're making or what's going on with the money, you're never going to see any of it.
No, definitely not. Definitely not. I feel like there's a gap between doing the bookkeeping. There's a lot of people that can talk about doing the bookkeeping, but like the overall strategy that your accountant or your CPA provides. An interim topic that gets solved by those conversations is like principal versus interest.
Yeah.
Because there's so many people that start in this business and don't realize there's a difference. If you don't pay attention, you're just investing and wasting assets. But like when you recognize expenses and when you capitalize them, I think is a big thing. And I haven't found anybody other than me that will run their mouth on it. Because it matters.
It matters, and it's also, people need to set it up for what works for them best too. Like for me, because I work full time as well, I will sell partials where I'm giving up all the payment right now instead of taking a chunk, because I will take 40 payments 6 years from now you know, because in 6 years from now, maybe I'm going to probably be doing what I want to do, and then, you know, have that money coming in. It's going to be ancillary, where today, the way my family is set up, I really don't need, you know, a few extra $100 a month or whatever that number may be. And all of a sudden, you know, I start stacking all those together, and now I've got like 75 partials, and it's like, oh wow, these actually, they add up for later on. So
that makes sense. Plus, you don't have to go crazy with the accounting right now. I mean, it's you get 100%, I get 0. What's easier than that?
Yep.
What were you going to say, Jamie?
I was just going to say it is the note investing is such a niche space that, I mean, you know, like my CPA, he can, because Debbie is really good with the books, and she kind of, you know, we kind of present it to him on a silver platter, if you will. But he, you know, it's not like he deals with note investors all the time. I already had him for our real estate stuff, and I don't plan to try to find a new CPA. But my point is, there are a lot of CPAs out there that have no idea how to handle notes. So, yeah.
It's like,
I remember the first accountant that I got to help me with notes had a ton of real estate experience. And when I said, do you work with note investors? Oh, yeah, sure. The first draft that I got of my return, every single note was in there as a rental. Completely missed the point there.
So that's a good note and bolt right there. I mean, we've probably mentioned that, Chris, before, but, you know, I had a different bookkeeper who was fine with our rentals. She was fine. You know, she knew how to do rentals, but then same kind of thing. She's like, oh yeah, I can do notes. I did them before. And let's just say Debbie had a lot of work to do to undo the damage that had been done. So yeah.
People do it CFDs and like, oh, I can depreciate a CFD. No, you can't.
No.
You know, it's, you know, well, you shouldn't, I should say. But, well, the other thing too is, you know, there's a lot of people like, you know, whether you have an S Corp or LLC, and I know we really spun this episode, but it's important that people kind of hear these conversations, because I know some people get all caught up in, oh, well, I bought it for 20, but it's got like a UPB of 60. So it, you know, how do I put that on my books and so forth? And, you know, the tax code, again, is like this thick. So you could do it 27 million ways. And I know one person was talking once, well, if you do a mod, you're supposed to capitalize all of that at once and so forth. And that's like, well, yeah, but that's only if you're doing it one way. But if you run it as, if I pay 20 grand for it and I sell it for 30, I get my 20 back, I make 10, then yes, I made $10,000. Unfortunately, it's ordinary income, and it is what it is. But, you know, it's many different ways you can skin that cat.
Oh yeah, and there's no consensus on that. So that's, in my opinion, why you need to have a CPA involved somewhere. Not because they absolutely know the answer, because none of them do, because like you said, the code is like this. But they've seen it go wrong, and they have experience in other situations where if the IRS started asking questions, they know how to present an answer that shows why you did it, that you're being consistent, all those things. There was one guy that was supposed to be the most fantastic accountant in the world in the note space, very friendly with the 70, probably now $100,000 person we were talking about before. And he was speaking at an event, and, you know, I raised my hand to ask a question about, you know, accounting for that bump that you get in a modification. And he's like, well, you have to record it. I'm like, but you don't have it. And you don't have any guarantee whatsoever that you're going to get it. He's like, well, what would you do? I'm like, well, in the note space, I've heard people talk about taking that new mod and going to a couple of experts in the space and have them give you a price on what they would pay for it if they bought it that day, which is really not going to be that much more because it's not seasoned. And he goes, so you know a lot of CPAs in the note space? I'm like, no. What do you mean? He goes, oh, so you go ahead, you go listen to your investor friends. I'm going to go talk to the people that are going to pay attention. And he said that in front of a big group of people. Like, oh, I see. We're getting defensive when someone asks you questions. Yeah. You're the guy I want to listen to.
The reality of it is, and again, because the code is so thick, as long as you can explain why you did what you did and do things consistently, you know, from what I'm being told, 99 out of 100 times, you're not going to have a problem. because there's some way you can interpret a code. And the reality of it is, I'm not making like $10 million a year on notes. So it's something that if they want to come and spend, $500,000 to audit, what I'm making, they're going to spend in paying in taxes, they're going to spend a lot more money on auditing you than actually what you're actually paying Uncle Sam. So
exactly. And just a tidbit that my CPA gave, when you're trying to come up with a plan for how to do it the best way, always leave something little wrong. Just a tiny little thing. So if they come and audit you, they can correct you on that tiny little thing and then go away and feel like they've won.
Yeah.
If they have to keep looking because you've done such a great job, it's going to take forever.
That is
definitely
a note. That's a note and bolt we have not heard before. That's a good one.
There you go.
So is your CPA in Texas or California?
Or
neither.
Or neither. Yeah, I don't know. California taxes just...
Yeah, crazy.
We actually are thinking of selling the strip mall that I mentioned. Especially now, it's in Texas. I'm now in California. But if I sell it, I have to pay 10% off the top to California.
Well, you chose to move out there.
Well,
I'm just kidding.
Do you still own anything in Texas where you could, own something in Texas, go live there for, 100, however many days a year, and then, claim that as your residence, and then,
No. Nice try, though. California charges you, or considers every single LLC, regardless of what state it's in, as being a California LLC if you have ever answered a phone call or written an email from California.
Wow.
So,
they charge you to breathe, I heard.
Yeah. So, but I'm only here until the youngest graduates high school, and he just started 9th grade. Hub's got a great job that was... He used to be a teacher, and now this is getting him into construction and real estate where he wants to be. And it was just something you couldn't pass up. So he's getting 4 years, and then we're the hell out of here. So I have to hold my strip mall for 4 more years.
Can you 1031 it again?
I think so. I hope so. If it still exists, then.
Well, that's
iffy. That's a whole other topic.
We don't have enough time for that today.
No, we don't. But to close the loop on the DME, you both will be there again, which we're very excited about. And to encourage your listeners to come join us, because I think it's going to be great. We have a little code. So you guys can save some money. It's a 10% discount, and it's very cleverly called Good Deeds because,
nice.
I'm a finance person, not a marketer. So I hope people will join us. We are going to be as COVID safe as we possibly can be. I mean, everybody will have masks on, and we'll have extra space at tables and things like that. And I think it's going to be great.
DiversifiedNoteExpo.com, is that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Again, we're finance people, not marketers. So yes, it's very local.
Who are some of the other speakers who will be there?
Let's see. Matt Kelly's going to be there. He has not titled his own presentation yet, but it will again be something like, "Would you stop being stupid?" Bill Barnell is going to be there. Okay. He's going to be talking about commercial notes and all the opportunity that's available there, because that's going to come probably sooner than the residential stuff.
That's definitely coming down the pike. Yep.
Yeah, for sure.
Let's see. Aaron Quinn's going to be there. My favorite attorney from Florida and Georgia. Let's see. Who else is going to be there? Tony Sotil is going to be there.
Okay.
They're both doing a little happy hour. Let's see. If it's Thursday, Friday, that would be Wednesday. See, it's not just time zones that I get confused on. Let's see. I'm looking at the sheet and I'm trying to go down. The problem is Liz is really responsible for the scheduling, so she has it all memorized. She's got a great panel staffed for, like I said, her seller finance. It's 2 people that I do not know. And then I'm trying to get Beth to come speak about insurance. I mean, not doing a whole panel or a whole presentation on insurance, but she's going to be part of the, how to manage assets in, how to work through them appropriately. So she'll give a little more, because we did touch on the losing, not getting a really good payoff for the insurance that you have. We'll be doing that.
Daniel Singer?
I'm sorry?
Is Daniel going to be there?
He's thinking about it because, he's in California and it's all the way to Florida and,
So I'm looking at it now. So Nate Hare from New View Trust. Did you mention him? Okay.
He's doing the whole panel. Just like we did last year with the one whole note investor IRA panel. And what they're focusing on, which I think it's my event, so I think it's interesting, and I asked them to do this. Instead of just saying, this is how you could use your note to invest or your IRA to invest for retirement, they're also focusing on how we can tap into that. Because, there are some custodians that make it more difficult. So if you had all your investors from that one custodian, it would be a nightmare and all of that.
Favorite custodian? Pop quiz.
I'm sorry?
Pop quiz. Favorite custodian?
I like Forge Trust, which used to be IRA Services.
Oh, I haven't used them.
I like them a
So
lot.
just throw out some other names here. Nathan Turner, Bob Repass, Jack Krupe.
Yeah. Chaz Gwynn was going to come, but now he's involved in that big, huge sale that got announced yesterday on Facebook.
Oh, yeah.
So he can't make it. But again, he's California and we're doing it in Florida. So I think Nashville would have worked better to get the whole country.
Yeah, I was excited to go to Nashville. I've never been there, but
maybe next year. It could happen next year. We can hope. Or you know what? We could all just meet there. We don't need to have an event.
Washington, D.C. is a great place to have events.
Yeah. There's all those politicians around,
So.
Yeah. So, I think Kevin Cordell's finally going to come. He didn't want to come last year, but he's going to speak, so that'll be nice because, representing Madison. David Polio is coming, and he's going to have a booth, but he's not going to speak. I don't know why. He's a little on the shy side, so maybe he doesn't like that.
Yeah, he is, but he isn't. I would say Kevin's shyer than Dave is.
Yeah. But I've never seen Dave present. Have you? I've seen Kevin present before.
No, I've never seen Dave present, but I've had conversations with Dave, and he seems. I mean, he's not very timid. I mean, he's somebody I'd want to go drink beers with.
It's someone that I have drunk beers with. Yeah. So.
I've seen him on a panel before, and he didn't seem shy. So.
Okay.
Maybe
he's just not feeling it.
For those listening,
I'm sorry?
I was going to say, for those listening, just forewarn, Matt Kelly, we all love Matt, and so forth. Matt, what I love about him is he tells it like he sees it.
Yes.
So,
yes.
From that perspective. So his will be very educational and probably entertaining as well.
Yes.
So.
But you also have to pay attention. Like, he won't stand up in front and go, okay, company ABC, don't deal with them. They're not good.
No.
He'll be like, and you'll notice that some people are not on here. And then he'll keep going. So if you're not paying attention, you're like, oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, he's making a point without having to say it. So, yes. I'm a big Matt fan.
I am too.
I think he's hysterical.
Yeah, he knows a ton. I've learned a lot just from listening to him, for sure.
I joke with Jamie. I'm like, I'd love to have him on, but I'm also somewhat a little fearful in some sense because I've seen him on other episodes and stuff where, he ends up doing all the grilling, and it was entertaining. And I think the person actually took it down because they got completely taken to school on one episode. So it was funny.
Well, we could edit it down to 5 minutes.
Exactly. You could just put in all the parts where he makes fun of other people rather than
Right,
what you're doing. That'll work.
So,
Have you ever?
Why do you do that?
Exactly. Have you ever been around him when he decided he wanted to figure out what a person was about? Have you ever watched him do it to someone?
I've never met him. Actually, I've never met Jamie, so that's not saying much.
Sure.
But I've never met Matt because, because I also worked. I think the only event I've been to in person was DME back in maybe 2017 or 18.
I have a picture of you talking to Nathan Turner, who's also going to be at the DME, by the way. But you two chatting.
Yep.
Yeah.
So.
What does Matt do when he's trying to figure
Well,
out someone?
see, Matt doesn't sleep. So like at 3:00 in the morning when we're all trying to maintain our health, he's on the internet trying to figure out who's doing what. So if an investor comes along that he can't figure out, if when they're selling a program that says you can make $40,000 in recurring income every month, and then he goes and he looks and they don't own any notes, he wants to figure out the disconnect.
Sounds a lot like Chris.
Okay, what's the name of your LLC? All right, what state is it in? No, it's not there. Oh, you do it in trust. What's the name of the trust? No, that won't work because the state doesn't do that. I mean, and you're sitting there going, oh God, do I watch? Do I laugh? Should I go to the ladies' room so I'm not next? Like, what do we do now?
Just tell the truth.
I do the same thing.
The whole truth.
Chris does the same. Right.
You know, somebody will brag like, I make this much per month, and I look up at their entities. Nope, no. I'm like, based on the properties that are on public record, no, you don't. You know, or I've done this many deals or this month. Looking at, no, you didn't. Or I've made this much money in notes and so forth. Well, you haven't paid your bills, so what'd you do about it? And you're like, something don't add up if you bought 10,000 notes, but you don't have you can't afford lunch without a credit card. Well, you either are very bad at money management, or you really aren't making that on notes. So
and see, the people that pay attention to bookkeeping and all of that, we know. Yeah, sure, I can make $1 million. How much did you keep?
Right.
Where, your expenses, your this, your that, have you got any holes that money's just flowing out of? Yeah. So you always have to take that with a grain of salt.
The simple way to look at it is, how many people do you know in the space that have quit their jobs to strictly do notes? Not a lot.
Not many.
No, there's Wayne.
Yeah.
That's pretty much the only one I can think
of. I know some people who have quit, but are they, they really, replacing, and again, it also, and it's not really a fair statement because, for example, if you live in, I'll say, not to knock the Midwest, but, the average salary in the Midwest compared to California or, Jamie and I here in Washington, D.C. and East Coast, it's incomes are significantly higher. So I could easily, if someone said, hey, if I could retire off $50,000 a year, well, yeah, I could retire, but I'd also be taking a significant pay cut and barely could afford my property taxes. But
people don't necessarily think of that. Yeah.
But I guess we'll be wrapping up this episode. Kimberly, any final thoughts, Jamie, Kimberly, on this?
We've covered a lot of ground.
We did cover a lot of ground. It's kind of hard to sum up. I guess the summation.
We go everywhere.
Yeah. I hope I will. I know I'll see you too. I hope I see a lot of your listeners in Florida. It's going to be fun. I feel like, how we mentioned that a lot of people have left the space. I feel like the fun, smart people are still here, and we enjoy each other.
Crazy thunderstorm going on. Sorry, I don't know if you can hear that. Yeah.
Nope.
In case you lose me, that's why.
We never have those here in Southern California, by the way. And I know that some people like that. No, I love a good thunderstorm. And I miss them. So I'm jealous.
Jamie,
this will likely come out probably 2 weeks. We can maybe bump it up. Maybe 2 or 3 weeks before the event, something like that.
That'd be great.
Yeah, I'm looking forward
to
meeting you in person. Good deeds.
Yeah.
One word?
That would be very nice. What was that?
One word?
Oh, one word.
No. He's asking, is good deeds one word?
Oh, yes, it is one word.
Yeah, that's what I meant. No, is it good space deeds or just good deeds? Okay, so.
Yeah, just good deeds. Yep, one word. But I can give you one word for note investing.
Go ahead.
Ethics.
Oh, yes.
Love it.
Mm-hmm.
So. Ethics, integrity, pretty much.
Transparency, Yeah.
Honesty.
So,
yep.
Honesty.
Kimberly, if people want to reach out to you, how can they connect with you?
Well, you can reach me. I'm always on Facebook. And I use all three names on Facebook. But there's noteinvestingacademy.com. There's Diversified Mortgage Expo.com. My actual email address is, I could see the flashing light.
Yeah.
That's
See that?
Yeah, I
You
saw
see
that.
that?
my actual email address is on my other investing company, KBF at inspiredcapitalgroup.com. But any of those organizations, you can find me there. So
Sounds great.
Good.
Thanks a lot, Kimberly.
no problem. Thanks for having me.
No problem. And for everyone listening out there, hopefully we will see you at the Diversified Mortgage Expo. And as always, make sure to leave a review on your favorite listening station. And as always, go out and do some good deeds. Thank you, everyone.